Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Midtown Scholar Bookstore's virtual event series. My name is Alex Brubaker. I'm the manager here at the Scholar, and as always, I am live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at the bookstore. Whether you're joining us on Crowdcast or Facebook Live or even YouTube Live, thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome to our live stream series where we host authors and speakers, and we keep the conversation going about books we love. Our featured book this afternoon is The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. If you haven't yet purchased the book, I'd like to encourage you to do so. Purchasing Lisa's book through us helps support the author, our staff, and it helps the bookstore continue to run during this really weird and strange time that we're in that's only getting weirder. We're offering free media mail shipping in the US for a limited time to make the price more reasonable for you. So if you click the green button below, it's right below my face, you should see it there. That'll direct you to our website to purchase a new paperback copy of Lisa's book. And I should also mention that we have more of Lisa's and Megan's books available at that link. So check it out if you'd like to grow your pile of books to read in the coming months. If you're watching this through Facebook Live or YouTube Live, look in the comments section and you should see we've provided a link there as well, or simply head to midtownscholar.com. Now on to our program this afternoon. We are honored to welcome best-selling authors Lisa Jewell and Megan Miranda to virtual Harrisburg. Megan Miranda is the New York Times bestselling author of All the Missing Girls, The Perfect Stranger, and The Last House Guest, a Reese Witherspoon book club pick. She's also written several books for young adults, including Come Find Me, Fragments of the Lost, and The Safest Lies. She grew up in New Jersey, graduated from MIT, and lives in North Carolina with her husband and 2 children. Now, I have to make a special plug for Megan because we are hosting her later this month for her new novel, The Girl from Widow Hills. This book comes out later this month, but you can pre-order it at the link below. It's the same green link. That'll take you to our website. And if you pre-order it, you're guaranteed a signed book plate along with the book from Megan. These are in limited supply, so make sure to get your order in before publication. And if you follow us on Crowdcast, you'll see that Megan's event is on June 25th. So sign up below, register, and pre-order the book with the signed book plate, and we hope to see you later this month. And now our featured author this afternoon is Lisa Jewell. Lisa is the internationally best-selling author of 18 novels, including the New York Times bestsellers The Family Upstairs and Then She Was Gone, as well as Watching You and I Found You. Her novels have sold more than 4.5 million copies across the English-speaking world, and her work has also been translated into 25 languages. Of course, the book we are here for this afternoon is, again, The Family Upstairs, which is now available in paperback. I'm going to read you one quote that I absolutely adored from A.J. Finn, author of The Woman in the Window. He writes about the book, quote, "Your hands quake, your breath fades, your heart wallops your ribs. Medical emergency or Lisa Jewell novel. Few writers of psychological suspense devise such swift, slippery plots. Fewer still people their stories with characters so human and complex. The Family Upstairs glitters like a blade and cuts even deeper." What a blurb. One more quick note. We have a lot of questions already coming in from you, so we need your help to make sure your favorite questions get asked. If you could please upvote your favorite questions, just go to the Ask a Question button. Again, it's below the screen, below the green button, and you can upvote your favorite questions. They'll go to the top of the screen, and that will allow Megan to use them for the audience Q&A. So get those questions in and upvote your favorite ones. But now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming onto the screen Lisa Jewell and Megan Miranda.
We're all alone, Megan.
Here we are. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here and to be talking with you because I'm sure I've told you before that I'm such a fan. One of the things that I just love about your books is how they have these complex characters, these complex relationships, and these family drama and secrets, and these really intricate mysteries as well. And they're just such fast, suspenseful page turners. So I wanted to start by asking you kind of about your path to becoming an author and this type of book in general. Did you always want to write suspense? Was that kind of your plan from the start?
Actually, I was going to say no, because in fact, my first book was a romantic comedy. But when I think about it, when I actually sat down to write my first novel when I was 26 years old, I kind of assumed I would write something dark because that's where my taste lay in and stuff. And yeah, so it kind of took me by surprise when I laid out the bare bones of this book that was about these flatmates living in South London. And I'd hoped to be doing some really twisted, dark love triangle. And instead, I think it was something to do with my psychology at that time. I'd just come out of a really dark marriage, and I'd been sort of trapped in suburbia with a very controlling man for 5 years. And I'd finally escaped this awful marriage, and I'd come back to London. I had a new boyfriend, I had my friends, I had my freedom. I was madly in love. London was just, it had never been more beautiful because I hadn't seen it for so long. And I just ended up writing this really quirky, romantic, funny, kind of odd love story. It was very, very feel good. And yeah, so that's how that was my first novel, and that was a huge hit, and that's how my career took off, was on the back of a romantic comedy. And of course, because it was a big hit in the UK, certainly, then my publishers had taken a punt on a debut novel, and it had paid off, which meant that they'd quite like me to keep writing more of the same. So for quite a few books, I'd say about the first 5 or 6 books of my 18 were relationship novels and romantic comedies. So yeah, I've been on quite a journey from that point to where we are now with my sick and depraved and deeply twisted hands. I've kind of ended up writing what I always thought I was going to write from the beginning, and it's just taken me 20 years to get there. So
I love that. That's fascinating. Well, when I think about, this book in particular, it's just so complicated, and the relationships are, it kind of spans these generations as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about this book in particular and how you got the inspiration for it? I'm thinking you have this creepy atmosphere of the house. You have this large cast of characters and these family secrets. And I'm wondering where you started and where you got the inspiration for it.
It might assume that the inspiration was possibly to write about cults, or possibly to write about spooky houses. But actually, and it's so often the way, I'm sure with novels, that the finished product looks nothing like the little thing that first landed in your head 2 years beforehand. They evolve and they grow and they transform and they warp and they twist and they turn into something completely different. So actually, the book was inspired. What I wanted to write about, and that feeling you get if you want to write about something, was a woman that I saw on holiday with my family in 2017 in the south of France. She was kind of scruffy. She looked a bit rough. She looked a bit stressed. She had 2 small children with her, and she was dragging them into the shower block of a private beach club, kind of looking furtively over her shoulder to make sure nobody had seen her taking her children in. And she may have been homeless. She may not have been homeless. She may have just had a sweaty day on the beach. I don't know, but my brain just took over, and I just found there was something about her energy that was fascinating, and I just could not stop thinking about her. And I just sort of, the more I thought about her, the more I kind of embellished this sort of bare bones of this woman with her 2 children who may be homeless, and I imagined her playing a fiddle, busking on the streets of Nice at night. And it just sort of, I just wanted to write about this woman, and this woman ended up being Lucy, who's one of the 3 characters who tell the story of the family upstairs. And Lucy's a kind of mystery character. For the first few chapters, when you're reading, you're kind of wondering why you're reading about this Lucy, this homeless woman in the south of France with 2 children who plays the fiddle in the squares of Nice at night. But she's actually, there would be no family upstairs if it hadn't been for me wanting to find out about Lucy and who she was and what her story was and what she was running away from. And what she was running away from was something awful that happened in a huge house in Chelsea back in the early 90s. So that's where it all came from. Everything else I had to sort of make up afterwards.
Yeah.
So she's running away from a house. So what happened in that house? I don't know. I've got no idea what happened in that house. What I need is a historian. I need a character now who's going to tell me what happened in that house, because I don't have a clue. And that's where the next character came from, who is Henry, who is a 10-year-old boy who speaks to the reader in the first person and tells the reader and me, because I didn't have a clue, the story, the history of what happened in the house in Chelsea.
I absolutely love that. And it actually kind of feeds into my next question, which I think I know the answer of, was do you start with character or do you start with the plot first? And I think we can decide the answer here was...
I would say, never plot, never ever plot. It's either character or it's theme. And I haven't actually written about a theme for ages. Quite a lot of my middle books, when I started moving away from romantic comedy towards where I am now, when I was thinking of what I'd like to write about, often a theme would come to mind. So I wrote a lot of family dramas, but since I've started writing suspense novels and thrillers, it's very much it's a person. It has been a person. And then the book that is coming out in October in the States, called Invisible Girl, again was another one inspired by a fleeting glimpse of a stranger in the snow one day in London who just captured my imagination. And then you have to fit them into something somehow.
I absolutely love that. And so then the mystery kind of comes afterwards from the characters and thinking about what they're running from and thinking about what secrets they're
or what they're
hiding.
capable of, or yes, exactly, what secrets they're hiding, that sort of thing. Yeah, exactly.
So the setting for the book, which is, to me, it's such an atmospheric read, and it's so creepy to me, and it just keeps getting tenser and tenser as you go. Was it inspired by a house that you knew or a setting that you had seen, kind of like the character kind of inspired you? Or is it totally your imagination?
If you actually were to read all of my books, you would find that each one of them has a character that is a house. So I've always loved writing about houses. And so maybe it was inevitable that when I come across this character that I wanted to explore, this Lucy character, that I should then immediately decide that a house must have something to do with her story. And I'm born and bred in London. I've never lived any I look around, I just love London houses. So writing about London in particular, I love, and I can just go crazy like a chocolate box, like which London house can I write about? And I just, for some reason, I just thought Lucy's story would have started in a really big house. And there's a lot of these houses, as there are everywhere, that are kind of anonymous, faceless houses. You can't imagine anybody actually living there because they're so big. And there were so many millions of pounds, and they just don't look lived in a way. And that's kind of what I pictured. And then it came to me that Cheyne Walk in Chelsea, which is one of the finest streets in London, would be the perfect place to house this family and their dark secrets. And so I went on to Google. I did a Google image search instead of getting on the tube and going to Chelsea and having a little writerly wander around with a camera and a notepad like another writer might do. I just did a Google image search of Cheyne Walk houses and found one that fit the bill. I thought, yep, that's the house. That's the one that matches the one that's inside my head. We'll use that one. So yeah.
Awesome. I love that. And talking about, your different characters, you talked about Lucy and you talk about Henry, you definitely have a large cast of characters, and you have different points of view with them as well, which as a writer, I'm fascinated by how other writers do this, because my brain does not work that way. So how do you balance your different perspectives and decide?
I always find this really interesting, because when I read a book that's written all from one perspective, and the last one I read that was really good was Ruth Ware's Turn of the Key.
Yes.
I don't know how a writer does that. I think that's some sort of dark art. How can you stay inside one person's head for the whole time, so you're only seeing your story from one perspective, and keep the whole thing together? I always feel like I'm cheating by jumping around from character to character, because it makes it so much easier to break the story up into chunks, to sit, you can if there's something that needs to be seen from another perspective, you can just jump out of that character and into another character. And it also just helps with pacing. So that's very interesting that you think using multiple perspectives is more skillful, because I don't. I think writing from all one person's point of view is much more skillful.
And
I don't know how you do it.
I love hearing different people's processes, because I feel like everyone comes from such different sides and angles, and we all get to the same place in the end. But it's fascinating to me how you juggle that, and how you decide, what character is going to tell what part of the story. But I just feel like you have so much more history you need to juggle with multiple characters too.
Yeah, but for me that makes it easier. It's just you're broadening the canvas and you can fill it up so much more easily. I feel like that anyway. And it's just, I find it really fun because I'll often just start with one character, but I'll know that at some point another character is going to have to jump in and take over. And quite often that doesn't happen until the very moment. So I've been obsessing about one character, but I haven't really given much thought to the other characters. And that was very much the case with this. So I thought, so I've got my historian, who is little Henry, and then I've got Lucy, who's the sort of the mystery character who kind of ties everything together. But I also needed a detective. I needed someone to unfurl the mystery. And that's where Libby comes in. So Libby is the third character in the book. And I just kind of had to grab her out of thin air because I hadn't really thought about what she was going to be like. And I think, which is one of the reasons why she's so uncomplicated. She's such an every woman. She's just a girl next door, because I just needed someone to walk onto the page and start wanting to know what had happened and start looking into the mystery for me. So Libby is 25. And she was adopted as a, you know this because you've read the book, but in case anybody hasn't, she was adopted as a baby. And she knows that both her parents died when she was a baby. And she also knows that her birth parents had left something in trust for her 25th birthday, but she doesn't know what it is. And we meet her just after her 25th birthday when the letter from the firm of solicitors arrives, and she opens the letter and finds out that what has been left in trust for her is an 8-bedroom mansion in Chelsea, which might well be the same mansion in Chelsea that Lucy was listening to us from. So yeah, that's kind of, and then Henry again, I knew I needed a historian, and I got to the point where I needed to start unfolding the backstory. And I just thought it'd be interesting, I've got 2 girls now. I could do with a male voice. Oh, it'd be interesting if it was a child. And then Henry arrived. So
that,
yeah,
love that. So
I just wait for them to appear.
Well, I have one more question I want to ask, but I know there's a lot of questions that are coming in through the audience, so I'm going to start going through those in a minute as well. And I've seen some, and I think there were some things I was going to ask you as well. So my last question is sort of about, we talked about the characters and we talked about the setting, but your books are so fast-paced and suspenseful. So how do you kind of handle the mystery or the suspense element there? What are your tricks? Tell me everything.
Well,
how do you do it?
You'll be unsurprised at this stage to find that I don't do any planning. Yeah. And I'm often the way I write, because I don't do any planning and I just let it kind of, I just hope for the best. I write something and sometimes I feel like what I'm writing is really good and is leading me somewhere, and then I just go with it. And sometimes I feel like what I'm writing is boring or nonsense or pointless and I've just wasted an hour of my life, but I'm going to stick with it and go back into those 500 words or 1,000 words and find something that I'm going to make work. God damn it, I'm going to make it work. And so often, and I don't have an idea, I have a very, very vague idea of what the whole concept is going to be. I certainly don't have any twists in mind.
Really?
And, yeah, not at all. And so I often feel like part of why my books are so pacey is because I'm not that far behind the reader. I'm probably only a chapter ahead of the reader in terms of knowing what happens next. And when I get to the end of each chapter, I feel, not just for the reader, but for myself, I need to leave a cliffhanger, because I need to leave a question that needs to be answered when I start writing the next chapter. So I will get to the end of a chapter and think, okay, we're coming to the end here now. What's going to happen in the next chapter? I don't know. And then that sort of builds itself. The fact that I don't know builds itself into my chapter endings, which are part of my secret powers for keeping people turning the pages, is my cliffhanger chapter ending, which might look skillful, but they're not. It's just it's just the only way I can kind of keep the momentum going when I don't really know what I'm doing. So yeah.
That is fascinating. And also, I mean, the cliffhangers chapters totally work. I mean, I think I read this book in a single weekend and just devoured it. I loved it so much. So I am gonna hop over to the questions. Okay, so I think we answered, do we know what happens before you write your first draft? Lisa does not know. So, okay, here's another character question for you from Adrian. Your character development in The Family Upstairs is phenomenal. Are any of the characters based on real people, either historical or a personal level?
Well, clearly Lucy is based on someone I don't know anything about whatsoever, just a woman I had a fleeting glimpse of. So I just went with nothing and built her up into something. Libby is just we're just talking about characters in The Family Upstairs. Libby is very much just a figment of my imagination. I imagine her to be an amalgamation of all sorts of 25-year-old girls who live just outside London and work for kitchen companies. She's just and then Henry started off, I didn't really know what sort of a guy Henry was going to be when I started writing him, and it wasn't until I got to the end that I realized I'd read how can I not remember the Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah,
I'd read that just before I started writing it, and I think I'd subconsciously channeled a little bit of that into Henry's character, which I didn't do deliberately. So they're not based on people I know, but things do get in there. Things do find their way in there, which you're not conscious of doing at the time.
Definitely. I definitely hear that, where you think everything is made up and, made up all the characters, and then people are like, well, and then you read it and you're like, well, actually, yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. Okay, so here is another question from the audience. And this one is from Christine. Do you get to pick your book covers?
There isn't a single answer to that question. Certainly when I was first being published, and definitely not, because I was young. I didn't know anything about publishing. My publishers knew exactly what they were doing, and they had a very clear idea. And it was around the time of chick lit, so kind of everything sort of looked the same anyway. So what you would get is, here it is in pale pink, and here it is in a slightly paler pink. Which pale pink do you prefer? So they would give you a semblance of having a choice, but you didn't actually get a choice. And then as I became more experienced, I found editors kind of, if they were struggling with a jacket concept, might come to me. And I have actually attended one jacket brainstorming meeting. I was actually in the room when they were doing the whole thing, which I don't think many authors get to do. But now it's kind of, now I'm sort of much more of a brand, and I think everybody kind of knows what they're doing automatically now. They don't really have to kind of come to me so much. So at the moment, I just get presented with these stunning covers from all my publishers, my UK publishers and my US publishers. They're just like, I could get them, I don't need to, because.
Sorry, I think you froze for me for a second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm back. Sorry. Okay. Here is the next audience question. From Stacy. What is the favorite book that you've written? Do you have a favorite?
I can, because if I'd written fewer books, I might feel a bit bad to choose just one. But I can't choose. Anyway, I've written 18 books, so now I have like a little selection of favorites. So I've got my favorite of my romantic comedies, which was called Vincent Joy, which came out in 2010, I think. And then my favorite of my sort of family dramas that came out before I started writing suspense novels, and I would say from there, The House We Grew Up In, which was my novel about a woman with compulsive hoarding disorder, which I still got a big soft spot for that. And then of the suspense novels, it gets a bit harder. I would say The Family Upstairs and Then She Was Gone, probably. So that's 4. Yeah, so look, someone says Vincent Joy is wonderful. I agree. Vincent Joy is wonderful. You should all read it. It's lovely.
Do you find
Sorry.
Do you find that your writing process makes them kind of your favorites, like your relationship with like the journey you take while you write it, or is it kind of the after?
Yes, I think that probably does. I think that does have something to do with it, particularly with The House We Grew Up In, which is the only one of my books, and I don't know how you feel about your books, where I sat down with an idea of what I wanted to write about, which was compulsive hoarding disorder and the idea of a house becoming hoarded, and then in the unhoarding of the house, a family kind of, becomes fixed, a damaged family becomes fixed, and finished it and thought, that's exactly the book I wanted to write. And that's the only time that's ever happened to me. So there was a certain satisfaction in thinking I can be in control sometimes. I can know what I'm doing. So yes, I think that's part of why I've got such a soft spot for that book, definitely, because I actually enjoyed writing it.
I love that. And I know exactly what you mean about, when it kind of reaches what you hoped it would be when you sat down to start, especially for somebody who doesn't do plotting up front. That must be unusual.
Exactly. Yes, I'm used to compromise. I'm used to the feeling that everything's gone off piste, and I've managed to kind of corral it all somehow, but it's not what it was meant to be, but it's good in another way. But that was kind of good in the way that I wanted it to be good. So yeah.
That's great. The next question comes from Callie. What was your career before becoming a writer, and at what point did you decide to kind of switch to writing full time?
Okay, yeah. So career, I didn't really have one as such. So I went off tangent I had a vague idea I wanted to be a writer when I was young. And then I went off on many tangents. I ended up doing, I left school when I was 16. I didn't go to university. I ended up doing this really weird fashion course called Fashion Promotion and Communication, which was as weird as it sounds. Then I ended up working there's a British high street fashion retailer called Warehouse. And I ended up working straight from college in their head office, working in the pattern room to start with. Then I ended up working in their PR department as a PR assistant. Then I got made redundant from there, and I was out of work for about a year. And then I got a job as a receptionist for a posh shirt making company in their head office in Battersea. And that's what I was doing when I started writing my first job. I was in fact, I'd been promoted from receptionist to secretary at that point. So I was the PA to the marketing director. And that was my job, and I was earning peanuts, having fun. It was a fun job. And if you had asked me at that point, before I turned the corner to starting to write my first book, where I thought my life was going to go, well, I would have said I have no clue. And I was honestly, I think of myself as a feminist, but back then I was holding out for a rich man. I really was. Because I couldn't see anything in me or my makeup that I had no ambition or focus. I just wanted to go somewhere every day and do something nice and then get a bit of money. And, so I didn't have that drive to be anything or do anything. So me sitting down to start writing my first novel when I was 25 or 26 or whatever it was the very last thing I ever thought I would end up doing. And I only ended up doing it because a friend of mine made me a bet. We were on holiday, and I just mentioned that I'd quite like to write a book because I was drunk and I just read High Fidelity by Nick Hornby and thought there should be a female version of High Fidelity. There should be a female version of Nick Hornby. Maybe I could do that. And I mentioned it drunkenly to her on holiday, and she was a journalist, and she was just so used to people saying they wanted to write books, and I just think she just wanted to shut me up. And she said, why don't you just start writing a book? And if you start writing a book, I'll take you out for dinner to your favorite restaurant. So I did. And I passed her the 3 chapters of this book I was so embarrassed. The whole thing was ridiculous. I just thought it was just madness that I should be even thinking about writing a book. So I actually I printed off the pages and passed them under a table in a pub. So I've done what you asked me to do. I've got the pages. And she read them and she loved them, and she made me send them out to some agencies. And I got loads and loads of rejection letters, which was absolutely, nothing less than I'd expected. But then I got this one agent who thought that there was some promise in my writing and took me on, and so that's how my first novel came to be. And you have to pinch me still for me to kind of believe that I've got, I went from being an unambitious secretary looking for a rich man who thought she wasn't good at anything to here I am.
That is an amazing story. So how was that writing process of the first book then? Once you decided you were going to do it, was it did it come easily for you? Did you was your first draft that's awesome.
Yeah, I had to get around the distraction thing. I'd never been at home during the day before for a start. I'd worked every day since I left college. I'd been in an office. So I had to kind of get used to being disciplined. And I also had the friend who made the bet with me. She was so very invested in this, as you can imagine, that she asked to see every chapter as I wrote it. So that was very motivating. And she was always so enthusiastic and positive about everything I wrote. More, give me more. So she really, and another thing that I found really encouraging, that really pushed me through that year of doing something so, peculiar, was that every single person I told I was writing a book, I expected them to not be dismissive, but I was amazed by how seriously people took it. And then I'd go and see a group of friends who I hadn't seen for a while, and they'd all say, "How's the book going? How's the book going?" And there was just so much encouragement and belief. It was like, wow, people think that I'm me. They actually think I could write a book. They don't think it's weirded. So that was another thing that really pushed me through that year of writing my first novel. So it was just, I don't know about quickly. It took me a year, which it takes me less than a year now to write a book. So much slower than I write now, but I did it.
How many books have you written now then?
18.
You're on number, wow.
18 and a bit. 18 and 22,000 words of another one.
That is amazing. Okay, so the next question comes from Vicky. Will you always favor a multi-narrative?
Yes. Yes. I don't know how you write a book from one person's point of view. I don't. I mean, the closest I got to it was a book called The Truth About Melody Brown, which hasn't been published in the States yet. It's one of my middle books, but it's been published, I think, in 2021, next year or the year after. And that's as close as I've ever got. But even with that, I had to keep putting flashbacks in and everything. I couldn't just stick with her. And interestingly, that's my shortest book as well. So maybe sort of writing from one perspective kind of forced you to shorten it. I don't know. But no, I am a multiple perspective. That's how I do it. So, yeah.
Okay, so next question is from Teresa. What kind of books do you like to read? What authors and books do you read in your free time, when you have free time?
I think I like reading the same sort of books that everybody down this side panel likes reading. I like reading the really commercial psychological thrillers, the hot ones of the moment. I don't have very kind of niche taste in literature. I used to actually a lot more when I was younger, but now I'm very much the biggest book of the moment. I want to read it. I love other female psychological thriller writers. I love Ruth Ware. I love Louise Candlish. I love all the writers whose names I cannot remember because you put me on the spot. Sorry. All the other writers who write the brilliant books. So something like, for example, behind me there is My Dark Vanessa. That's the sort of thing. If it's there and it's shouting at me and everybody's talking about it, I want to read it. I read books that like the books I write, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you read them while you're writing as well, or do you?
Yes, I'm very, very good at compartmentalize. I did another one of these online events, and the woman who was interviewing me got very, very deep into that concept of real life and emotion and writing and characters and how those things bleed into each other. But I don't know about you. I don't know how that works for you, but for me, I compartmentalize really easily. Nothing bleeds into anything. My writing is just this thing that happens in a bubble of 3 hours a day. I think about plotting and stuff when I'm on the move, but I won't be emotionally connected to the writing until I go back to it. And I can write about something really harrowing and then just shut my laptop and just sort of go and bake a cake or something, or, So yeah, I don't have that sort of that problem. Real life blending into.
This is sort of a question I feel like is a follow-up to kind of what you were just saying, from Stacy. How do you write your book so quickly? Do you have a routine where you make yourself write a certain amount a day?
Yes. So when I say I write books quickly, it still takes me a year, but most of the writing, I would say 2/3 of the book I write between September and December. So in 4 months, I'll write the last 2/3. So the first third, I do still write 1,000 words a day, but there's some other stuff going on as well, like editing the book that I've just delivered and what have you, and it takes a bit of time to build up the momentum. So yeah, and then I always take the summer holidays as well.
Yeah.
And then I go back to it in September with my chunk that I wrote before, and then I just really get on with it, cancel all engagements, and just crack on and just be really disciplined. And I write it's about 3 hours a day. In normal times, I write at that point from September to December. I write at my kitchen table. I'm unable to do that at the moment because my 16-year-old daughter has decided that it is our kitchen table. So she's doing her work there as well, and I don't have anywhere else in the house to call my own, so I've actually rented some office space over the road. So at the moment I'm going to my little office across the street every day for 3 hours and writing my words there, but hopefully when this is all over and my delightful child goes back to school and I get my kitchen table back, I'll be back at the kitchen table writing there.
No, I totally understand that. I'm a creature of routine as well. I find routine really helps me. I have my place I write. This is where I do my work.
Yes. And actually, if there's anybody down this panel who is a wannabe writer, and I think it sounds like you would agree with me, when you're writing, routine is everything. Anything that shakes you out of routine just knocks the whole process for six. It really does. I find it really difficult. Even if there's like one thing in my diary, like, oh my God, I've got a lunch with my publishers on Wednesday. I just suddenly think, well, that means I'm not, well, how am I going to get my words written? And then that just has a knock-on effect for the whole of the week, and I feel completely thrown. So yeah, absolute like Groundhog Day routine is completely my best friend when I'm writing intensively like that. Earlier on, I don't mind a few distractions, but by that point, yeah.
Once you hit your momentum, then you need to just go full in. Yeah. Okay, so I have another writing question from Anna, who asks, do you always start at the beginning and work to the end, or do your books kind of spread out?
Yeah, no, I start at the beginning and spread out. No, I start at the beginning and go to the end. I don't start at the beginning and spread out. That doesn't make any sense. I got distracted by someone saying delightful child down the side. She's delightful, yes. So I very much start chapter 1. I will sometimes go back and like plonk a prologue on it or something if I think the story needs rooting in a different way at the outset. But no, I like to, and people have asked me again as well about writing from different perspectives. Do you write all of the one character and then chop them up afterwards? But absolutely not, because what happens, like I was saying earlier about my cliffhanger endings, what happens at the end of chapter 9 completely informs how I'm going to start chapter 10. So if I was chopping them up after the event, I would lose all of that energy, that yeah, what's the word? It's a scientific word and it's gone from me. But yeah, the kinetic energy that hits off from the end of one chapter to the beginning of the other, I'd miss out on all that. So no, I write in order, chapter by chapter, character by character.
That's awesome. Okay, another question one more question on writing. I'm also interested in this from Hannah. What made you transition to writing more spooky, psychological, thrilling books from kind of what you started in?
Yeah, it was so I'd moved away from the romantic comedies, and I had moved into what I call my family dramas, my novels with themes. And I was writing a novel 6 books back, and it was a family drama, and it was called The Third Wife, and it was about, unsurprisingly, a man who's been married 3 times. And I just wanted to explore those dynamics, you know, how complicated it is, how the children that get left behind feel about dad moving out and having children with somebody else, and how the ex-wives all get on with each other. And I just hit a point writing this book where I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I was just bored. And so I randomly, talking as I was just now about plonking a prologue on the beginning, I just randomly wrote a prologue in which the third wife, who is this young woman called Maya, ends up under the wheels of a night bus in central London in the middle of the night, dead as she dies. And then I'd made a bit of a mess for myself to clear up. But it felt really necessary for me to do something incredibly dramatic and kill someone. It then made that one of the hardest books I've ever written, because I'd already written half of it. So I then had to sort of kind of work out, you know, the first half, how it all fitted in with this girl dying and why she died and had somebody killed her. And of course, having had a loyal readership at that time who followed me from my romantic comedies into my family dramas, I'd now killed someone, and I kind of held my breath a bit, thinking, how is this going to be taken? How are people going to feel about the fact that I've just killed one of my characters? And I sort of was waiting for a bit of a backlash, and it didn't come. And I think that just kind of freed my inner darkness to just venture forth and crawl all over the page forevermore. So yeah, that was The Third Wife. It was a bit of a pig's ear of a book, I think, because of the way in which I wrote it. But it opened the gates for me to do what I kind of had set out to do 20 years before, and change my mind to write the dark stuff. Yes.
So I think we have time for one more question. And kind of speaking about the types of books you write and what you've been working on in your process, can you tell us about what's coming next from you?
Yes. Oh, I should have brought it with me. I could have. Oh, it's downstairs. I could have shown you that I finally got a print copy of my next book, which I didn't get in the UK because it was just a lockdown, so they weren't able to print me any ARCs. And I got my American ARC through in the post, and it's like finally got my hands on a 3-dimensional book. So anyway, it's called, I wish I had it. Yeah, pretend. It's called Invisible Girl, and it's very different to The Family Upstairs. It's very contemporary. There's no historical backstory. It's all set in the area of the posh bit of the area in London where I lived for a few months when we were having our house renovated, and I didn't really like it. I always thought I'd really like to live there because it's so posh. And when we had the opportunity to move there for a few months, I jumped on it and then decided I didn't really like it after all. And I thought that was quite an interesting thing to write about. That sort of sense of discomfort, being out of your comfort zone. And it was while I was living there that I saw this guy walking, who peered through a snowstorm just coming downhill from near where we lived. And he just looked dark. He looked like he had a lot going on with him. And I just, like I said earlier, I had this feeling of, what are you capable of? I don't know. There was something about him. I just thought, what are you capable of? You kind of look bland, but there might be stuff going on behind the scenes. Really wanted to write about him. So he turns up in this book, Invisible Girl, and he's called Owen. pick, and he's 33 years old, and he's a bit of a loner. He lives in his aunt's spare bedroom, and he has an uncomfortable single bed, and his aunt hates him. And when we first meet him, he's just been sacked from his job as a computer science teacher for inappropriate sexual behaviour at the Christmas party with two of his students, which he refutes very strongly, these allegations. And he lives opposite this family called the Fours, and that's Kate and Rowan, and they've got 2 teenage children, and Rowan is a child psychologist, and he had a patient called Saffron Maddox who was he treated her from 12 to 15, and then he declared that she was fixed. She'd had a childhood trauma. He declared that he'd fixed her and she was fine and she could go off with her and live her life, but she disagrees. And so we meet her right at the beginning of the book. She has kind of been stalking him, benignly stalking him, and she learns a lot about Rowan. And then on Valentine's night, she goes missing from outside Rowan's house. But the spotlight falls firmly upon Owen Pick on the other side of the street, who's been hanging out on incel forums saying inappropriate things. So it's kind of very different to the family upstairs. But again, there's a lot going on. Yeah, it's dark. It's very dark, and it's also set in January and February, so it's kind of physically dark as well. There's not a lot of sunlight in it. So yeah, so that comes out on October the 13th in America. Because I know I've got some English readers here as well. August the 6th in the UK, October the 13th in America.
Coming up soon.
Hello, Alex.
Hello. I just wanted to wrap us up here. Lisa, Jewell, Megan, Miranda, thank you so much for visiting virtual Harrisburg. It was so nice. This was so much fun. I loved it. So thank you again. If you, Lisa and Megan, do you have the family upstairs with you? Can you hold it up?
Oh my God. Are we not going to look at Megan's book?
Yeah, we will.
Oh,
so this book, The Family Upstairs, it's now out in paperback. If you click the green button below, it's below all of our faces. Free media mail shipping in the US. So click that green button below. It'll take you to our website, and we'll ship out The Family Upstairs as soon as possible. Thanks to our viewers for attending. And Megan, we want to give your book one more plug. This book is coming out June 23rd. June 23rd.
Wow.
The Girl from Widow Hills.
Yes.
We're going to host an event with Megan on June 25th. So we want everyone to sign up, and you can pre-order The Girl from Widow Hills. If you click the green button below, again, go to our website and you get a signed book plate for that as well. So thank you again, Lisa and Megan. Thank you to our viewers, and I'll give you the last word.
Oh, can I have it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Both
Can
of
I
you.
thank Megan?
Oh,
thank you so much.
So fun.
It's just, I can't believe I got to be interviewed by Megan Miranda and just talking about myself when we could have been talking about you. It's just been awesome meeting you, and I've loved it. And thank you to everybody down the column as well. I've just loved catching bits of your comments as we've been talking. It's been very, very wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Alex, for hosting.
So
Yeah, of course.
yes. Thank you. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Stay safe. See ya.